Look at those physiques. Magnus Carlsen and Nanya Pomniachi in the shape of their lives for the Crunchlabs Masters. The whole chess world ripped right now for this event. It was one of the entry criteria. And Magnus and Jan meeting once more because it's the big fat losers semi-final. Now Magnus smashed Jan 3-0 already this tournament, but then they've both stumbled, ended up facing each other once more, drew the first two games, so they go to this Armageddon, meaning Magnus has to win with the white pieces here. What does he do? It's online chess, rapid play. He turns to pawn to d4. Not best by test, but he's drawing on some old preparation from their World Chess Champs match. Now we see knight f6 from Jan, c4 from Magnus, the most explosive move. Now we see e6, and if you go knight c3, we get a mainline Nimzo Indian, but not played. Magnus goes knight f3 with a Winnie and a nay, as many of the top guys do when they develop the horses. Now we get d5 for the high five, and what does Magnus do? He plays pawn to g3, not only building the banana hammock, but starting the Catalan opening. And very few people know this, but it's actually named after a chess playing cat called Alan. Very overpowered opening. Magnus loves it. Jan carries on with some calm development, and now bishop g2. Magnus v Cheetos, the Archbishop of Banterbury, hits the Milky Way, long diagonal. Jan just castles the king, queen c2, leaving the pony at home to defend the c-pawn, and now Jan, what does he do? Picks up his own c-pawn and crashes into Magnus. Look at that, like two freak waves colliding in the stormy Southern Ocean. Magnus doesn't like it. He wants to abate the eye of the storm, and so he immediately takes Jan's c-pawn. But not to be outdone, Jan comes streaming out with his femme fatale. Magnus blocks the check, and now he picks up the c-pawn. We've had a little crossing of swords there. Both players going to recapture soon, but not just yet. Magnus castles first, both players do a king safety wink, and now Jan is the first to pick up a pawn here. He does it with a gobble gobble. Now Magnus goes bishop e3, and he's got all his bits out. Great policy on the chessboard, not so much on a beach. Rook's now connected, queen under fire, and of course Magnus starts looking to the ceiling. Poker face. Many top professionals do it when the queen's under fire. Your opponent's more likely to blunder, but not Jan. He streams off to the right in a dead straight line, making noisy car noises as he goes, and Magnus now goes knight e4. Eyeing up the c-pawn here, but there's a problem. After this bishop d7 move, reuniting the clergyman, and Magnus picking up here with a nom-nom, knight's coming off, queen recaptures, under fire. Well, how solid is Jan's position? Pawn structure symmetrical. You have to win this game, remember. Now these are some of the top moves on the board for white. You know, queen c2, queen f4. Someone's been playing with my arrows again, might be Alan. That's not a very good move, but what does Magnus do? He goes back to his Achilles heel here, loves taking the ladies off the board, goes queen e5, but it's a huge blunder. There's a problem, tactical. Can you find it here? Magnus needs to head back to tactics school this week, I tell you. Jan, of course, sees it. He's frowning. What's going on here? Have I missed something? No, I haven't. The move is sniper takes on f3, and you just removed the defender of the queen. So if you recapture in any way, bishop or pawn, well, of course, your queen just drops off the board. So Magnus is forced to take here. Bishop recaptures. Jan's won an entire pony, but now Magnus crashes through on b7. His only glimmer of hope is he does pick up a rook. This one recaptures, and he's got a rook and a pawn, worth 6 points they say, for a bishop and a knight, also worth 6 points, but this isn't equal. You can see it by the evaluation of Stock Barnacle, because the minor pieces work better together. f3 from Magnus sets up the reverse bathtub, and Jan goes knight b6, headed for the central light squares. Magnus goes rook ac1, very natural, and now Jan's play a bit strange. Bishop f6 looking natural, or knight d5, but he goes f6, never play it, says Ben Feingold. Surely you now go rook c7, looks amazing. Maybe Magnus didn't like this, hitting these two, but then there's rook takes on a7, not ideal, so knight d5 isn't best. Bishop d6 is apparently. Okay, looks kind of tasty, but Magnus doesn't play it. Or rook fd1, he goes bishop c5. Natural, trying to exchange one of the bishops. The bishop pair is a powerful asset, but after it drops back to d8, good move. Rook fd1 and bishop e8, the clergyman reunited once more, very happy. We can see there's a problem. All the entry squares covered. Jan solid, even though passive. Magnus has got to stir it up. He goes full b3 cowboy. Both players decide to mutually bong cloud, and now we get the knight d5 move. Finally, running straight into e4, pushing it back, but Jan's still solid. Rook d6 played. Yes, Magnus is invading, but where's the killer blow? Where are the pawn weaknesses to target? Well, hang on. Jan creates one now with pawn a5. Knight c6, more precise as I was drawing on the board. Suddenly you've got access to this square. Magnus immediately pounces. Why is this now given a level game? Well, you're swapping one of these bishops. Not ideal. The rooks can activate. Imagine if this drops. You've got two passed pawns running down the board. The juicers. So rook a7 played to cover the 7th. Magnus activates here. Pawn under fire. Bishop d7 and king e3. The imperial march begins. Don't know how that ended up as a knight move. Not intended. Now we see knight c8 going after the rook. Magnus spots it. He is world number 1 in all 3 time formats. And knight d6. This one, hop, hop, hop in. It's all Nepo can do. He's turned it into a frog. f4 now played, and Magnus, he starts an absolute barn dance. It's a who. Hank Williams coming in over the airwaves. Jan goes h6, and look at this. g4. They are line dancing across the board here. Bit of Dolly Parton kicks in. Now we see king e7 and h4. Johnny Cash coming through loud and clear. They're line dancing around the room here, loving it on the board, but all good things must come to an end. Jan now goes on a Tour de France. Magnus pushes g5. Yes, we get a kind of parallel bayonet pawn structure, but the line dancing's done. The music stopped. Party's done, everybody go home, and avert your eyes if you're easily offended. Because what does Jan do? He captures on g5, splitting up his pawns. 3 islands there, very ugly. Magnus now recaptures with a gobble gobble, but hang on, he's split his pawns too. So to be fair to Jan, it's potato potato. Both players with weaknesses. Now knight d6, continuing the Tour de France. King f4 now played here, and knight f7 continues the journey. We see g6 played, forcing the knight back, and e5. Magnus, serious space gain here. Bishop e8 on the board, going after g6, defended of course, and now an excellent move from Jan. He realises he's got to go active. He plays rook d7, looking for rook d5 or rook d2, and if you take the pawn here, well, you're too late to get out of the forking way because knight c6 hits both of those cannons, so you cannot touch this pawn here. That's why we see rook a8, preparing to capture with that rook. But after Jan goes rook d2, going after the a pawn, Magnus does not take it, and you really have to click to understand why. It's not to do with knight b7, because then there's this check and the knight drops off the board, or check, rook blocks, swap the rooks, and then it isn't good. White's got the passed pawn, so that's not why. But knight c6 is good for black. Hitting here, goes on and on the line, but it goes something like this, and eventually black starts spinning around, attacking some stuff. It's hard to stay with everything. You know, if you invade here, you drop here. If you try and come here, well, then there's this check and this drops. Complex game, different game, not played, but that's why Magnus did not touch the pawn. Instead, he goes for this check here, forces the bishop block, well, not forced, but that was played, and now he doubles up, saying you take the a pawn, I take your bishop. Excuse me. So rook d5 from Jan. He goes after the e-pawn with a check. Therefore the king blocks. Now king e8 breaks the pin. Rook a8 played. A little bit of shuffle here, and this is Magnus's trouble. If he keeps shuffling, he loses the game. A draw no good, so he's got to go for a3, and both players just do a nudge and say who can play the worst chess here to spice it up for the fans. This is what happens now. After check, the preferred moves are these, right, but not played, and pretty much every move gets a question mark now. Knight c6 preferred, but we'll stick with the game. Pawn attacked. Now Magnus sidesteps, saying I dare you to take, then I pick up your bishop. Jan of course doesn't. He starts checking, singing check out my melody. Magnus covers the pawn, but finally Jan spots it. Hops the knight forward with a flurry, hitting the rook, which checks, but the problem is the pawn on e5 is terminally weak. Rook g8 played, and now it drops. It was moribund. The king checked, stepped back, checked once more. Magnus staggering to the queen side to try and get a passed pawn going over there, but king f6. If he could gobble that g-pawn, it wouldn't be so bad, but he's not in time. He checks, the pawn drops. Jan's a pawn to the good, as well as having the better pieces. Magnus now looking for tricks. Knight e5, rook a7, and after rook d3 check, the king's now getting driven back miserably. Rook d5 played, defending. a4, knight c6, Jan up on the clock. Rook sliding away from the attack. Knight b4 check, king c3. This is Magnus's kind of dream position, squeezing like a Titanoboa, and after rook d5, covering the a-pawn once more, rook g8, threatening a check, rook g5, rook gf8, now the bishop activates, coming to d5. What to do? Magnus tries rook e1, check from the center of the board. King c3 looking really natural, but then you're running into this check. How do you survive? So Magnus steps up, now the pawn drops, and it is terminal. King b6 played. Bishop takes on a4, the whole board has collapsed. Rook takes on e6, check played. King h7, and now Magnus, completely lost, regardless, makes a losing blunder with rook to f4. Looking for a check, eyeing the undefended bishop. Excuse me, losing my voice today, but there's a big problem here. You're running straight into knight d5. Fork town, population Magnus. Magnus doesn't even wait for it to land on the board. He resigns the game. Rough couple of weeks for him in his personal life and on the board. You know, he's not at the races here in this tournament. His worst ever finish in a Champions Chess Tour event, as I understand it. I hope you enjoyed. Do smash subscribe if you did. You're highly likely to become a Grandmaster watching Epic Cheese videos. Results may vary though. And for another epic game of chess, check out the video on screen. Cheers.